soda. These two common household items fuel what's probably the most common science project that you can do at home. The acid in the vinegar is going to react with the base in the baking soda to form H2O, which is water, and carbon dioxide, which is a gas. Now, the liquid water, that can stay in the bottle, and that's just gonna sit there and not move. But the CO2 is a gas, and that's going to expand vigorously, and that's going to form a lot of bubbles that want to expand and grow out of this, fueling the volcanic reaction that you see right here as these two combine. Now, this little volcano demonstration is cool and all, but here as engineers, we want to ask, can we take this science and make something more interesting out of it? And the answer is actually yes. So in order to do that, we're going to have to borrow another scientific principle as well. This time, we're going to be using Isaac Newton's third law of motion. See, as those bubbles are coming up and expanding, they are pushing up. And the third law of motion says that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So that means that as those bubbles push up, they are pushing down on the bottle. Now, when they're sitting here on the table, the bottle can't really go anywhere. It's just getting pushed down into the table. But if we turn this sideways, then as the bubbles expand this way, you're going to push the bottle this way. And that principle right there is going to form the basis for our rocket car that we're going to build together today.
For this project, you're going to need an empty soda bottle, straws, wooden or bamboo skewers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 separate bottle caps, a hot glue gun to tie them all together, and last but not least, the rocket fuel, vinegar and baking soda.
All right, so let's move on to how we're going to build this rocket car. So we're going to take all of the equipment that we have assembled here, and we're going to build axles, we're going to build wheels, and we're also going to build a rocket nozzle. It's going to let this move a little bit faster. One other tool that you're going to need is a good sharp pair of scissors, because we're going to need to shorten these straws up and shorten up these skewers just a little bit. So these skewers, these are going to be your axles. This is what lets your wheels spin, and they're going to work with the straws so that these wheels can spin freely, and that way we can get the most speed. So the first thing that we need to do is cut off the sharp part. So do this carefully. It has a tendency to fly off, and you don't want to get that in your eye. All right, so we've got one. And now let's cut the other one down to about the same length. We're also going to cut these straws down to size. So however long you cut your axles, you want the straws to be a little bit shorter. And we only need 2 sections of this. So there's one, that's a good length right there. And I'm going to make sure the next one is the same length just by lining them up like that. And then cutting this one on that same line. They don't need to be exactly the same, they don't need to be perfect, but we do want them to be pretty close. All right, so assembly. So take one bottle cap. This is gonna form one wheel. Now we're gonna take our hot glue gun and put a dot of hot glue right in the center of it. Make sure you give this time to warm up. And also, when you're working with hot glue, make sure you never touch the end. It gets very hot. We're just gonna put a dot of hot glue right in the center of the bottle cap. I'm going to use that to stick one skewer to that. You can press it there until the glue cools, and once it cools down, it'll stay there on its own. So now we're going to feed one of our straws through that. It's just going to sit right there. I'm going to take another bottle cap, and we're going to put a dot of hot glue right in the center of this one too. And the dot doesn't need to be super big, just a little bit will work. You just want enough that it sticks the skewer to it. So we're going to take this and put it on the other end of the skewer. And just like the last one, we're gonna press that together, just like that, until it sets up, until the glue has time to cool down. So this is our wheel and axle, and the straw is what lets it spin freely. So we're gonna make another one exactly the same way. Now, once we get our two wheel and axles assembled, it's time to attach these to the body of our rocket. So the way that we're gonna do that is with yet more hot glue. So we're gonna have a set of front wheels, and a set of back wheels, just like this. Now, depending on the shape of your bottle, you might have different flat sections or different ridges. This one happens to be a little bit further out up here and over here. So those are the spots I'm going to use. Now, the most important thing here is you want these wheels to be facing forward and backwards. You want them to be lined up with the direction that your rocket's going to go. You don't want them to be off to the side like that, because then it's going to start spinning. It's going to really throw everything off. Now, I find the easiest way to do this is to take your hot glue gun and put the hot glue directly on the bottle, just like this. And that will give you a spot to attach this straw to. Be careful not to get your fingers into the glue because it is hot and it can burn you if you get it on too much. So once you have your first one on, your second one, you want to be lined up with it, just further down the bottle. Add some glue here to make a spot for it. Putting this right on top. Just like the first one, once it's stuck down, and add some extra glue to really reinforce that, really make that a strong connection. All right, so there is the car part of our rocket. Now, there is still something really important that we are missing. If we just put vinegar and baking soda into this right now, it's just going to kind of bubble out. So we need to make a nozzle for this so that that comes out very fast, and that generates the reaction that we need to push that. So this part is a little bit more dangerous, and you may want to get an adult to help you out with it because we're going to use the hot glue gun for something it's not really designed for. See, the tip of the hot glue gun is very hot. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take that 5th bottle cap that we got, and we're gonna use the hot glue gun to melt a hole through it. That's gonna make a smaller opening. That's gonna mean that the vinegar and baking soda, that carbon dioxide release, that has to go through a smaller hole, and it's gonna come out faster than it normally would. So carefully take your hot glue gun, put the bottle cap on the table facing down like this, and find the exact center. And you're not gonna pull on the trigger. You're not gonna pull on the trigger to put any glue out. You're just going to push straight down, and you let the heat of the tool push through it. Now, you can also accomplish this with a drill if you have one, but you're gonna want to use a very small drill bit because we wanna make a very small hole here. Now, using the hot glue gun does take a minute. It's probably a good idea to unload it as well so we don't get any glue pouring out. To the tip of the glue gun there, apply steady pressure, and you'll be punched through in no time. Now, once you have your opening, we can take one of these skewers and we can use that to clean this up and make sure that it punches all the way through. Looks like that could use a little bit more opening, so I'm going to take the hot glue gun once again, come to the other side, and use this to make sure that that hole goes all the way through. I'm just going to take the skewer and use that to clean it up once again. And that's about the size that you need to aim for as well. Just big enough that one of the skewers that you're using passes through it. If we can do that with it, that's pretty good. All right, engineers, so now all that's left here is to test. Got a few tips to help you guys out with actually launching this thing. First recommendation, let's get a piece of paper towel or tissue paper. If you can rip off a small piece of this, you can use this to make a little plug for the bottle cap. Because what we want to happen here is we want the pressure inside the bottle to build up and then all release at once. So a little plug like this, you can fill that in. Kind of want to rip this so it's a little bit shorter, or even cut it. So just needs to be about that big, and it just needs to be big enough to really fill in that gap right there. If you have any extra, you can kind of lay it on its side like that. And then this is the real secret. Get a little piece of masking tape like that. You can use this to seal this in, just like that. And leave it loose like that. That way we can rip it off later on. So now we need to prepare our rocket fuel. So we've got our cap set up. I recommend putting the vinegar in first. Anywhere between half a cup and 1 full cup of vinegar will work out. The more vinegar you add, the more explosive the launch will be. So start small and work your way up. So I'm gonna start off with about half a cup. And I'm just gonna go ahead and pour this straight into the bottle. Now for the baking soda, and this one's a little bit unusual. Instead of measuring the baking soda, I'm actually gonna put it straight into the bottle cap. That way when we're ready to launch, what we do is we take the bottle cap and pop it right on top, and the baking soda goes in. You'll see how that works in just a moment. So load up this bottle cap with some baking soda. Just like that, doesn't need to be too full. Now that this is loaded up, I just want to go through the steps we're going to take when we launch this, because it's all going to go really fast. So first, I'm going to tilt this over just a little bit. I'm going to put the bottle cap on top, and as soon as the bottle cap goes on, baking soda is going to start falling out. It's going to start reacting. So as soon as you start putting the cap on, the timer started. So you're going to quickly twist this bottle cap all the way on. You want to get it pretty tight, and it's going to start reacting. It's going to start fizzing, and what you want to do is get this all nice and pointed the right direction. And when you're ready to launch, you're just going to rip the tape off. The paper should pop right out, and then it's going to go flying off. Just be careful, because there is going to be vinegar and baking soda shooting out. So that's going to make a mess. You don't want to get any of that in your mouth or your eyes, so you want to be really careful. Wear goggles if you have them. Make sure nobody's standing behind you. And that's all the tips that I've got to help you get a good consistent launch here. So now let's take this whole setup, let's take this outside.
All right, so we're here outside the engineering lab. We've got our rocket, we've got our cap. I'm gonna combine these and let it fly off. So, really carefully. And once the pressure builds up, rip the tape off, and away it goes. All right, have fun, be careful, and make sure you clean up the mess that you guys leave.